is a sensory short. So we are going to play with standing upright, nice and tall. Yoga, we would call this tadasana, but we're going to play around with some ideas around this. So first, come into a comfortable position with the feet, lining the feet up with each other, a comfortable distance width apart. Knees facing generally forward, second toes facing generally forward. Most importantly, knees tracking towards second toes. So again, maybe play with what does it feel like to spin the feet out a little bit. What does that feel like in your body? What does it feel like to turn the toes in a little bit? But again, keeping the knees tracking towards second toes, and then coming to a place where maybe knees and toes are facing generally forward. Then from here, shift the weight forward and back in your feet some. Eventually coming to a place where the weight feels relatively centered between the front and the back of the feet. Wiggle your toes. And then inhale, you can lift the toes up. Notice the arches of the feet will typically lift up with your toes unless your feet are flat. Exhale and release. Inhale, lift up through the toes and the arches, if that works for you. Exhale and release. Inhale, lifting up through the toes and the arches, trying to keep the toes and the arches lifted, but pressing down between the rest of your feet, including the spot between the toes and the arches and the ball of your foot. Press that down. It's just the arches you're trying to lift up. And then spreading the toes apart. If the toes will move for you, they may or may not. And then lower the toes back down to the earth, trying to press the toes into the earth, but lift up through the arches. And then soften and relax here again, the bottoms of your feet. And again, then inhale, lift your toes up, feel the toes and the arches lifting up, connecting down through any of your foot that's not the toes and the arches. Spread the toes nice and wide apart again, if that works for you. And again, trying to keep the arches lifting up, pressing the toes down into the earth, rooting the toes into the earth, but feeling the lift of the arches. Relax. One more time. Inhale, lift the toes up. Spread the toes nice and wide apart. Arches staying lifting. Lower the toes down to the ground. Arches lifting. This time, try to keep the toes pressing down. Arches lifting up. Knees again spinning towards second toe. Bring your hands to your hips. Exhale, bend your knees just a little bit by pressing the back of the calves forward. So just letting the back of your calves press forward a little bit, knees bend, and then press the tops of the thighs back and slowly straighten the legs as much as works for you. Exhale, pressing the calves forward, let the knees bend a little bit. Inhale, press the thighs back, straighten the legs. Exhale, press the calves forward, bend the knees a little bit. With your knees bent a little bit, with your next exhale, tuck your hips under, and then inhale and tilt the hips back a little bit. Exhale, tuck the hips under. Inhale, tilt the hips back a little bit. Exhale, tuck the hips under. Inhale, tilt the hips back just a tiny smidge. Bringing a hand to the very tops of the hip, the sacrum, and feel the sacrum moving in and up a little bit. A hand, if you were bring it back to the bottom of the hip near the tailbone area, that's poking out a little bit more than the hand that's above at the top of the hip. And just making sure that the hands aren't even, that the hips aren't tucking under. But also you don't want this hand at the top of the hip to be moving way far in. So again, hand at the bottom of the hip, and you don't have to bring a hand there, but if one was there, pressing out a little bit more than the hand at the top of the hip. And then from here, press down through the feet, thighs, move back, straighten the legs, breathing here. Another way to think about this is that the tops of the hips moving in and up a little bit, but the low ribs in front, and you might want to bring a hand to the low ribs. They're hugging in and up too. So top of the sacrum and the low ribs lifting in and up, breathing here. And then from here, you can release the hands to the side. Do shoulder rolls up and onto the back a bit here, breathing, staying nice and steady now through the lower legs and the foundation, rooting from the hips into the earth. And then do shoulder rolls forward. So now keeping all of this we've stacked in the lower body, just bring the shoulders up and onto the back a little bit. Sternum lift up a little bit. So what we're thinking about so far is arches lifting up, calves pressing forward, thighs pressing back, a little bit of an arch, a little bit of a lift up to the low back here, top of the sacrum, top of the sacroiliac actually, low, the hips below the low back, low ribs hugging in and up, sternum, top of your chest lifting up a little bit, shoulders a little bit up, shoulders a bit onto the back, and then stacking the head and neck in line with the rest of the spine. So being careful the neck's not dropping, or maybe for a moment drop the chin. Inhale for a moment, lift the chin up. Exhale and drop the chin. Inhale, lift it up. Exhale, drop the chin. Inhale, come to neutral with the chin. And then if it works for you, something to play with too. Inhale, try to stick your chin forward a little bit. And then exhale, try to root the chin back a little bit. Inhale, trying to stick the chin forward a little bit. Exhale, trying to root it back a little bit. Inhale, sticking the chin forward. Exhale, pressing the back of the head gently back. So not way back, but a little bit back. Head and neck stacked above the rest of the spine. And then just breathe in here. With your next inhale, just inflate the whole body from inside out. And then exhale, just soften on top of that inflation. Breathe. And that's it.